We also have two of the classics to include this week. The first is Walter Izard's Methods of Regional Analysis, published back in 1960. This is a book that kind of founded the field of regional science. So before this, economists and geographers studied regional issues separately. They didn't really communicate with each other or share their work. Geographers focused on like descriptive maps and that kind of stuff. And economists largely ignored space. We talked about this a lot in Module 2. And all those early papers that Izard had, bringing those traditions together, creating like a single analytical framework for studying how economies are organized within space and the importance of geography and relationships between them. Um, this was a textbook basically of all those ideas that he wrote about, which kind of was the founding of the field. Um, so he's combining tools from economics, geography, and planning using quantitative models and using mathematic reasoning. It's like 700 some pages long. Obviously, you're not going to read that in 1 week. We probably struggle to get through it for the entire course. It's worth mentioning because of how important it is. And if you want to go to a job review and say that you know about this regional stuff, if the person interviewing you knows regional stuff, they'll know about this. So it's least important to touch upon and tell you that it's a thing and it's important. Now, the second reading takes us back to the 1970s. So it's still, kind of an old one, but it is important. So back then, shift share analysis was pretty widely used in regional economics. So it was fairly popular at the time. Like almost every regional development office or economic consultant used shift share to explain why some regions grew faster than others. But there was a problem with shift share analysis at the time. The method wasn't quite as good as it looked. There were some debates going on at the time why it was doing wrong. Some pointing out that there were shortcomings, others saying no, there's not really shortcomings. Well, I'm going to butcher his name, Esteban Marquez. When in this paper, identified and fixed that problem and gave us the modern version of shift share analysis, and it's still something that we use today. So you remember how the sort of classic shift share analysis breaks down regional employment growth into three parts. So you have the national effect, so how the overall economy grew, the industry mix, so whether the region had just what happened to be the right kind of industries, and the competitive effect, so what was going on with the local industries. And it was the competitive effect that would tell you if the region was outperforming the nation or if it was just because of something else that was going on. It's a simple framework, but it had one major flaw that they had to sort out, and which he does sort out in this paper and some subsequent work, that the competitive effect wasn't really pure. So Rosenfeld and Dunn and a few others noted that the competitive effect wasn't what they call pure, that it was mixed with some of the other effects because it depends on the region's industrial structure. So, the mix of industries as well as the actual performance of pure. So let's imagine two regions, both with a competitive advantage in manufacturing. If one region has a much larger manufacturing base, its competitive effects will automatically look bigger, even if its actual competitiveness isn't better. So that means that the competitive term partially reflects the size of the industry, literally just how big it is, not about its actual performance. So this would make it hard to tell whether a region was growing because it was truly competitive, because it was doing something right, or just because it was specialized in a sector that was really big and hired a lot of people. So his improvement was introducing the idea of homothetic employment. Homothetic employment is the employment a region would have if its industrial structure matched the national average. So by using this allows us to ask, what would this region look like if it had the same structure as the nation? Kind of getting at that first question, but taking a step further. Then by comparing the actual employment to this hypothetical structure, we can see whether the region's performance is due to structure, competitiveness, or due to both. So with this new approach, he redefined the shift share model and introduced a fourth term, the allocation effect. The allocation effect measures how well the region's employment is allocated to sectors where it has a competitive advantage. So if a region's workforce is concentrated in industries where it's competitive, The allocation effect is positive, meaning that it's making good use of its strengths. With the allocation effect now, sort of added, like complementing the original shift share analysis, we can get a clearer story of regional performance. This refinement made shift share analysis much more easily interpretable and something that was more useful for policymakers that were trying to understand why regions were lagging or why they were leaders. So this is one of those methodological papers that actually changes how scholars think of the topic. So today, almost all dynamic or spatial versions of the shift share build upon this logic. So this is, you know, one of those papers that led to basically all of the work that comes after it is being built upon.